A few months ago, I made a video detailing the Karate Mania event of 1986, and declared that it was the most successful kickboxing show of all time in continental North America. As it turned out, I was wrong. As huge as the Thunder and Ice extravaganza was, its record was shattered 6 years later when the World Martial Arts Challenge took place in Las Vegas on March 16, 1992. 14,000 fans swarmed the Thomas and Mack Center, and the show garnered between a 1.0 and 1.5 Nielsen rating on pay-per-view. The event was promoted by William Thomason and Jim Fitzgerald, the two reportedly having invested over $1 million in what was meant to be a major entertainment gala, with all the production and star power of a pro boxing spectacular. However, the question we ask in retrospect is whether the show lived up to its hype. Specifically, were the kickboxing matches everything you would expect from such an intensely promoted happening? The matter is all the more pressing when considering the outcome of its main event and its status as one of the most controversial endings in all martial arts competition. Let's examine the show, in as complete a format as I've been able to compile, and see what we can make of this special night in kickboxing. The World Martial Arts Challenge, or WMAC, was comprised of 5 matches with notable stakes attached to each. Disappointingly, I've been unable to locate footage of the opening bout, a Muay Thai showdown between Joksing Sor Ravati and Rungrich O. Smith. The fighters competed for the WMAC US Lightweight Muay Thai Championship, with Joksing winning via knockout in the 4th round. There's some ambiguity regarding the WMAC's titles, as well as the event's sanctioning. Several months after the show, Black Belt magazine claimed that the promoters had been unable to secure the backing of a major sanctioning body, and that while the International Sport Karate Association approved the bouts after the fact, the contested belts were specially created because the WMAC had no other titles to fight for. While there may be some truth to this, I believe that at least a few of the details are incorrect. For one, the ISKA was definitely involved in the matches as they happened, with all referees prominently wearing the logo on their uniforms. Additionally, even though this was the very first WMAC event, the championship belts seem to already have owners, at least for the matches I have footage of. It's purely speculative, but I believe that the belts may have been awarded at a prior time, possibly in recognition of a fighter's past accomplishments. Alternatively, the belts could be incarnations of titles the boxers already held, and were simply rebranded by the WMAC. The other, more immediate matter of contention is the experimental rule set used in every match, except the Muay Thai bout. Despite being approximated as international rules in the on-screen graphics, they deviate significantly from traditional freestyle stipulations. All punches and kicks are permitted, including kicks to the calves and both the outer and inner thighs. Clinch fighting and elbows aren't allowed, but knees can be thrown to the torso without holding the opponent. Headbutts, throws and grappling are prohibited. This set is similar to the modified Japanese rules currently practiced by the Glory and K1 promotions, but during this night in Nevada, it constituted a style of fighting that none of the competitors could have had significant experience in. The consequences of this would become evident as the night went on. Following the missing Muay Thai match, our review begins with a contest for the WMAC World Featherweight Championship between champion Kathy Long and challenger Kyoko Kamikaze. Long had been the face of women's kickboxing in North America since capturing the WKA featherweight title in 1990. She's currently a 4-time world champion and boasts a record of 16-1. Long distinguished herself as a fluid and flashy technician who significantly raised both the quality of competition and public awareness of women's martial arts. Jean-Claude Van Damme, who provides guest commentary, mentions his intention to cast her in one of his movies, and while this collaboration never materialized, Long was indeed poised for a career in film. She had already served as Michelle Pfeiffer's stunt double in the blockbuster Batman Returns. Her opponent traveled 9,000 kilometers to compete, underscoring the international nature of the show. Kyoko Miyazaki, better known as Kyoko Kamikaze, is only 21 years old and hails from Saitama, Japan. She already holds flyweight titles for the All Japan Kickboxing Federation and Caesar Takeshi's shoot boxing promotion, having defeated Fumiko Ishimoto for the latter championship and looking forward to future bouts against Saskia von Rijswijk and Lucia Riker. Her record stands at 10-2, and despite a significant size disadvantage, she's promised to knock out her celebrated opponent. The fighters appear to have dressed for the event, Long's boxing trunks having been fashioned to resemble a skirt, while Kamikaze wears the controversial sunburst flag emblazoned on her shirt. The unique rules they're fighting under will likely favor Long, who's won at least one of her titles under international stipulations, while Kamikaze will have to do without her usual grappling and clinching techniques. They will fight 5 rounds of 3 minutes each. Round 1. Long scores first with a roundhouse kick to the torso, after which the fighters mix it up with punches. When another roundhouse is partially blocked, Long attempts a jump spinning back kick, but is kicked out of the air. Kathy comes back with a series of roundhouses, and Kyoko retaliates with a right straight. More punches on the inside follow, and Long lands a side kick. She goes for another, but Kamikaze dodges and sinks a right hook. Long lands a low kick to the thigh as the round ends. Round 2. Long gains traction with a mid-kick and close quarter punches, Kyoko only managing to block a few follow-up kicks. A couple of left hooks by Kathy connect while Kamikaze's counterstrikes miss. Then Long baits her opponent by dropping her gloves and must accept a sidekick in the following exchange. Long's mid-kick lands again, then she and Kamikaze exchange big hooks. A couple of punches from Long breach Kamikaze's defenses and she blocks an attempted comeback with a stiff left. Round 3. Kamikaze lands a low kick and avoids a reverse roundhouse. She avoids several punches before she and Long exchange kicks to the thigh. Long applies pressure and scores with a roundhouse kick and a left straight. Kamikaze is dealt a blow to the back or side of the head as she spins around, and is left almost entirely on the defensive as Long punches and kicks her from one corner to the other. A spinning back kick leaves Long open to counterattack, and Kamikaze returns the rabbit punch. Long retaliates with a front kick, a couple of jabs and several more low kicks. Another front kick from Kathy connects, her onslaught ending only because of a slip before the bell. With the match now more than halfway over, the fight is solidly in Long's favor, Kathy having continually built up steam since the first round. Kyoko Kamikaze has absorbed an impressive amount of punishment with much fortitude, but she's been consistently outpointed. She will need to deliver an extremely impressive performance for the remaining rounds if she hopes to catch up, but again, she may be fatally limited by the lack of grappling and clinch fighting, which has allowed her opponent to control the pace. Round 4. Kamikaze jabs as she dodges Long's attack, only for Kathy to come back with a barrage of punches. A spinning back kick and a left hook from the American land, but Kamikaze retaliates with a hard right. Long sinks a flying knee to the midsection that has Kamikaze bouncing off the ropes. A low kick is immediately returned with a right hook. Kathy again drops her gloves, backing up her confidence with a couple of staggering hooks. Kyoko manages to intercept a roundhouse kick to the head, but absorbs even more punches afterward. She barely blocks a spinning back fist and a spinning back kick before the round ends. 5th and final round. Kathy opens with a left jab to the face, but Kyoko comes back with a straight right. Long misses a spinning back kick and must cover up against some countering hooks. She comes back with a massive punch of her own that floors Kamikaze for the first knockdown of the match. The Japanese fighter rises, but accepts a front kick and 2 punches which send her back down. Kyoko finds strength in desperation and makes it back to her feet, but her momentum has slowed to a stop and she's forced to accept even more punishment. She manages to sink a countering straight, and there's a brief moment of hope wherein she places Long on the defensive, but Kathy fights back with another spinning kick. A front kick sends Kamikaze staggering backwards, and she blocks a spinning back fist before the bell rings. The match is over. The decision goes to the judges, and the result comes as no surprise. All three unanimously give it to Kathy Long by a blowout margin of 50 points to 44. Long retains her title and bolsters her reputation as an international competitor, having delivered one of the most dominant efforts of her career. I believe this was one of her last matches as a kickboxer, as she committed to an acting career in the following years. However, this wasn't the end of her competing, as she launched a short-lived boxing career in 1998 and fought 2 mixed martial arts bouts in the new millennium. At the time of this posting, her most recent match was a 2015 decision victory at age 51. She remains an icon of American martial arts. Despite displaying tremendous toughness, Kyoko Miyazaki was unable to turn her Las Vegas debut into anything but a one-sided loss. A subsequent medical examination shed some light on her less than stellar performance. She suffered a broken rib and bruised kidneys during the fight, which could explain the lack of poise in an otherwise accomplished boxer. Additionally, she admitted to having no memory of the match after the first round, indicating just how much punishment she'd endured. She continued to compete in Japan, remaining active in some capacity until at least 1997, and was one of the first female fighters showcased by the K1 promotion. We move on to match number 3, in which Peter Cunningham defends the WMAC World Junior Welterweight Championship against Chris Anderson. Cunningham is another one of the major names that helped elevate the event to big-time status. The Canadian of Trinbagonian descent is probably the single best fighter produced by the Jet Center Kickboxing Club, at this point being a 5-time world champion and one of the most famous North American fighters to embrace international competition. His record stands at 42-1-1, with his only loss being a controversial decision to Richard Sela some 5 years prior. A flashy technician with intimidating speed and the ability to throw multiple kicks on a single extension, he's a fan favorite who'd already made his mark on cinema. His roles in the cult films Righting Wrongs and No Retreat, No Surrender already on his resume. He faces a worthy challenger in Chris Anderson, nicknamed the Pitbull. A lifelong competitor who won his first Golden Gloves title at age 13, Anderson is a former WKA World Lightweight Champion who's already fought some of the best in the world, including the former undisputed champ Victor Solier. He only recently lost his title, bringing his professional record to a still significant 53-3, with 42 of his wins coming by knockout. He contrasts dramatically to Cunningham in both style and showmanship. The fighters are scheduled for 8 rounds of 3 minutes each. Round 1. The two start off furiously, blocking some impressive strikes before testing each other with punishing mid-kicks. Cunningham knocks Anderson off balance with a low kick and follows up with a left hook to the face. Cunningham very narrowly avoids a hook kick, but catches a body shot in the following exchange. He's knocked backwards with a 1-2 combo, but retaliates with a front kick. He continues to unbalance Anderson with low kicks, at one point causing Chris to fall on top of him. Round 2. Cunningham opens with flashy kicks. He follows up a missed mid-kick with a defensive reverse roundhouse, then continues to maintain distance with a front and roundhouse kick. However, Anderson scores the first knockdown of the match with a 1-2 combination. Cunningham objects, and rightfully so, the punches not having actually connected, but the call stands and places Chris in the lead on points. Peter slips while attempting a sweep, but partially connects on a second attempt. Anderson blocks some roundhouse kicks, then gets hit with an overhand during a close exchange, followed by several hard hooks. Cunningham lands an inadvertent low blow as his opponent advances, and this results in a warning before the round's end. Round 3. Cunningham lands a strong low kick, then a roundhouse to the head. Anderson throws a hook kick but is knocked off balance by a stinging right to the face. Cunningham is beginning to master his opponent's rhythm, and connects with a countering strike before the fighters lay into each other in the corner. Peter lands some mid-kicks but catches a right hook against the ropes. The champion slips, but hits a left overhand and a couple of knees in the round's final seconds. Cunningham gets another warning for kneeing while holding, but he's likely started to level the scorecards. Round 4. A rapid punching exchange is followed by a low kick to Anderson's right knee, making the pit bull retreat. The standing 8 count isn't delivered, to Chris's detriment, as his reduced mobility immediately leaves him open to a swinging left while he backs into the ropes. The referee briefly halts the action after Cunningham strikes Anderson during a breakage. Peter then knees Chris in the head, leading to a point deduction for the Canadian. In the round's final moments, Anderson throws a right overhand while Cunningham launches a left low kick, and the American catches the worst of it. With the fight halfway through its scheduled duration, both boxers find themselves in uncertain positions. Peter Cunningham seems to have the advantage for strikes delivered and damage inflicted, but Chris Anderson may yet again lie ahead in the scorecards following the point deduction. The commentators have mentioned that Cunningham's unfamiliarity with the rules may be contributing to his troubled performance, and I agree. Both fighters still have the opportunity to make this match their own, but Anderson will need to find a more effective offensive strategy, while Cunningham needs to clean up his conduct lest he risk disqualification. Round 5. Cunningham leads with kicks, then catches Anderson with a hook. Peter lays in with more low kicks, causing Chris to drop his defense and receive another punch to the face. Cunningham catches the leg and both boxers go down for a slip. Anderson lands a side kick, but Cunningham is able to curb its impact by moving backwards, and then he retaliates with a couple side kicks of his own. Anderson has noticeably slowed down, finding himself in no position to counterattack and remaining purely on the defensive. Round 6. A straight right lands flush on Anderson's face, and he just barely avoids a Brazilian kick. Chris retaliates with a low kick that connects with Peter's knee, but Sugarfoot pushes him off balance with a front kick. Anderson limps in pain from Cunningham's strikes and he repeatedly leans against the ropes. A particularly devastating low kick has him holding on for support, but again, this isn't ruled a knockdown. A roundhouse kick to the head staggers Anderson, and following another low kick, he's reduced to covering up in the corner while his opponent unloads. The end of the round comes as a godsend for Chris, who suffered much during the previous 3 minutes. The Canadian has effectively jammed the American's efforts, and Cunningham is now in firm control of the match. With only 2 rounds remaining, it's looking grim for Anderson. Round 7. Peter swipes Chris's face with a left roundhouse kick, then uses a side kick to set up a strike to Anderson's left thigh that sends the challenger flying, finally leading to a knockdown. Anderson rises, but his corner throws in the towel, abruptly ending the match in a TKO. Peter Cunningham wins the fight, retains his title, and promptly takes out his cornerman with a celebratory backflip. Anderson is visibly displeased with his team's decision, and the commentators speculate whether the stoppage was premature. Nevertheless, it's likely that Chris's corner had never seen their fighter so pressured, and it's easy to argue that his chances of being injured had risen dramatically. That said, Anderson's resilience is noteworthy. He gave the champion a run for the title, and can take pride in what was a hard-fought match during a landmark show. Peter Cunningham prevailed by way of his speed and technique, all while demonstrating the effectiveness of kicks to the leg. He maintained his reputation as the best welterweight of his time, but was already approaching the end of his competitive career. He seems to have retired as a full-time fighter the following year, and defended his final world championship in 1996. Today, he continues to be involved in martial arts as a trainer, and also maintains an acting and writing career. His name remains synonymous with kickboxing. Next up is the match that stands out in the minds of most fans when they think of this show, and one of the most infamous bouts in kickboxing history. It's the showdown for the WMAC World Heavyweight Championship between Alexio and Branko Cikatic. At this point in his career, the late Cikatic is the shining star of Tom Harink's Cikatic gym, and likely the best upper-weight kickboxer in Europe. A dominant knockout artist who raised the level of competition in Muay Thai across the continent, he enters as a 5-time world champion and current holder of the WKA and IKBF cruiserweight titles, with significant wins over the likes of Andre Munnart, Adrian Thompson, Kirkwood Walker, Jan Oosterbaan, Kenneth Plock and Ray McCallum. His opponent Alexio is the reigning king of full contact in America, his reputation as an unstoppable knockout machine being second to none. He's a 6-time world champion and currently reigns as the undisputed heavyweight title holder. While Dennis made his name as an above-the-waist competitor and amassed an intimidating 50-1 record, he has in fact demonstrated aptitude for low-kick competition, holding notable victories under these rules over Larry Curtin and Dino Holmesy. Additionally, he's something of a movie star, his role in Van Damme's Kickboxer having made him a part of cult film history.
You don't win fights with that tip-tap shit. Power kicks.
This match constitutes a potential turning point for both boxers, as Cikatic takes his first step into the world of American kickboxing while Alexio seeks to silence the critics who've downplayed his domestic success by defeating a major international champion. The Cikatic-Alexio bout seems to be the driving force behind the experimental rules of the night, as both camps campaigned until the last possible moment for stipulations favorable to their respective fighter. Cikatic had demanded the use of knees, low kicks and clinching, while Alexio conditioned full contact style rules and the use of protective footwear. The rules do indeed seem to be an equal mix of both styles, and both fighters appear confident as they size each other up, their mutual aura of invincibility electrifying the air. As before, they're scheduled for 8 rounds of 3 minutes each. Round 1. Cikatic lands the first strike with a stinging low kick, but Alexio retaliates with one of his own and forces the Croatian Tiger into the corner. Another couple of low kicks shudder Alexio, and then Cikatic lands some knees. Alexio avoids a spinning heel kick, and Cikatic is warned for holding and kneeing. Alexio lands his signature body blows on the inside, a range at which he might have the advantage due to the clinch prohibition. Cikatic knocks away Alexio's front kick with a spinning back kick. Dennis absorbs an uppercut to the abdomen, then takes a left hook as he steps in. Branko slips during a roundhouse kick and Alexio lands more strikes at close range, including a hard uppercut during a stoppage. He connects with a spinning back kick as the last major move of the round. These were a very competitive 3 minutes, with both fighters acclimatizing to the new rules. Dennis has been vulnerable to kicks to the thigh ever since his loss to Don Wilson, while Branko is seemingly bereft of his major close-range weapons. It will be interesting to see how the fighters manage to work around these disadvantages. Round 2. Cikatic is dripping with water as the fight resumes, and promptly receives a warning from the referee for repeated kneeing in the clinch. He does it again, and a penalty point is deducted. Alexio lands a low kick and hook combo, after which Cikatic knees his opponent again. After missing a spinning back kick, Alexio is momentarily grabbed from behind. A medical timeout is called so a cut over the Croatian's eye can be inspected, but the match continues. Alexio absorbs a kick to the midsection. He manages to return it to some degree, but an attempted roundhouse kick to the head sees the American swept to the mat. Cikatic falls down following a left hook, but it's ruled a slip. Dennis takes advantage of Branko's penchant for illegal clinching by pummeling him with body strikes as soon as he's grabbed. The referee follows the fighters meekly, only later deducting a second penalty point for Cikatic's kneeing. The European champ will need to be extremely careful from this point onward, lest he be disqualified. Alexio loses his balance on a low kick as the match continues, and he catches a right hook to the head. Cikatic seems to think the round has ended and retreats to his corner prematurely, allowing the Terminator to come in and initiate bodywork. Branko misses a spinning heel kick but comes in with an uppercut to the torso, promptly returned by Alexio. Despite frequent breakages, I believe that this has been the single most action-packed round of the entire night, the competitors doing everything they can to impose themselves through brute force. A combination of infractions, apparent misunderstandings, and poor enforcement of the rules seems to have turned this from a professional contest into a grudge match. The opponents look fed up with each other, and heightened tempers will likely contribute to what's about to come. Round 3. Branko Cikatic doubles back after the bell to receive his mouthpiece, and so begins the round with Alexio almost cornering him. Alexio receives a warning after he retaliates to Cikatic's clinching knee with one of his own. He seems to surprise Cikatic with his best low kick of the match, but Branko connects with hooks to the head. 3 consecutive uppercuts cause Cikatic to break the clinch of his own accord, and a mid-kick sobers the Tiger. Then, the controversial finish takes place. The fighters are broken from yet another clinch, and Alexio loses his right foot pad while throwing a kick. The referee calls for a timeout and looks around fruitlessly for the missing pad. He eventually decides to continue the match without it. Cikatic had retreated to lean on the ropes and is called back to resume combat. He turns to address the referee, and in this moment, Alexio strikes him with an unprotected left hook to the face. The official helplessly tries to separate the fighters as Cikatic falls to the mat, Alexio throwing a kick as his opponent crumbles. It ceases to be a kickboxing match as Cikatic's cornermen enter the ring to attend their fighter. Alexio looks agitated and confused as his opponent is again inspected by the ringside physician. Cikatic attempts to return to the center of the ring but is held back. At this point, the bout seems to end officially, with Dennis Alexio's corner removing his gloves while Branko Cikatic receives further examination. The crowd boos fiercely. A post-match interview with an angry Alexio promptly ends after Dennis drops an F-bomb. Announcer Michael Buffer enters the ring and delivers the verdict. It's a technical draw, determined by the physician's opinion that Cikatic is unfit to continue. The judges' scores aren't tallied because less than half of the match had been fought. The crowd is very unsatisfied. Dennis Alexio claimed that the referee had given him the signal to resume fighting before he struck his opponent. Branko Cikatic claimed the referee had told him to stop. The video replay seems to show the referee delivering indecisive instructions, his hand still resting on Cikatic's glove as Alexio strikes. The fact that the official immediately attempts to break up the action, even before Branko falls, seems to indicate that he was surprised that Alexio had resumed fighting. For the biggest match on the biggest US kickboxing show to end in such a dissatisfying and ugly fashion is the single greatest problem of the World Martial Arts Challenge. Journalists and kickboxing personalities subsequently described it as a perfect storm, from the unfamiliar nature of the rules to the lack of sportsmanship and the poor officiating. Referee Pat Burleson was roundly criticized for his conduct throughout the match, seeming woefully unprepared to regulate 2 very heated fighters under experimental stipulations. The ISKA later reviewed the bout. While the outcome is still largely remembered as a technical draw, Black Belt magazine reported that the promotion eventually decided that Cicatic's failure to return to action constituted a forfeiture, and the ISKA therefore changed the ruling to a technical knockout in favor of Alexio. Thus, Dennis was the WMAC World Heavyweight Champion. Despite the messy finish and its infamous reputation, the match is still very exciting, and it remains one of the initial landmark meetings of international stars in the upper weight divisions. With less than half of the match fought, it's impossible for me to predict who would have been the winner under different circumstances, but I have to acknowledge Alexio's superior conditioning. Even though Branko Cikatic had won a 12-round decision only a year ago, the heightened weight class and Alexio's punches to the body seemed to be draining his energy. After seeing him lean on the ropes in exhaustion during only the third round, I'm skeptical of the Croatian's ability to have fought until the very end. Dennis Alexio remained one of the most famous and successful kickboxers in the world for the remainder of his career, but another incredibly controversial match later that year against Stan Longinidis removed him from all future low-kick competition. He competed for another 7 years in total, retiring as one of the most dominant fighters of all time, but he'd effectively been left behind while the fight scene gravitated towards more universal rules. Branko Cikatic recovered from his loss. He may have benefited from the controversy, and continued to make a name for himself as a worldwide competitor. In 1993, he won the inaugural K1 World Grand Prix tournament by knocking out 3 of the world's top fighters in a single night, a feat which consequently earned him the reputation as one of the greatest kickboxers in the world. He retired after 1999 as a 7-time world champion and subsequently became a trainer, in which capacity he produced the legendary Mirko Cro Cop. He died of pulmonary disease in 2020, at age 64. The Alexio Cikatic match was so dramatic that it almost feels as though the show should have ended immediately afterwards. For people watching on television, it did. The final bout of the night apparently wasn't aired during the initial pay-per-view broadcast, much to the chagrin of viewers from around the country, but it survives on video. It's a fight to determine the number 1 contender for the WMAC Heavyweight Championship between Maurice Smith and Steve Kruwell. While Kathy Long, Peter Cunningham and Dennis Alexio are all extremely popular fighters at this time, none of them command the sheer respect of Maurice Smith. The man referred to as the Muhammad Ali of kickboxing has played an invaluable role in modernizing the sport in North America, as one of the earliest heavyweight proponents of low-kick fighting. Smith, who famously urged his American compatriots to fight like the rest of the world or get out of the business, is entering into his 9th year as undefeated WKA heavyweight champion, and hereby hopes to bolster the reputation that garnered him superstar status in North America and Japan. His record stands at 41-3-3, with 30 knockouts. And, like the other North American stars of the night, he's been in movies. He's bound to be an extremely tough obstacle for his opponent, a fighter seeking to enter the realm of true world champion-level competition. Steve Kruwell is the reigning Kick US heavyweight champ, and enters with a promising record of 34-1 with 30 knockouts. I don't know much about him, footage being difficult to come by, but he fights out of Manfredo's gym in Rhode Island. He'd recently delivered an impressive knockout of Zenny Reynolds, and captured his title by knocking out Dennis Lane the previous December, leaving Lane in need of medical attention. Kruwell and Smith have the unenviable task of winning over the thoroughly disenchanted audience. Kickboxing isn't a performance sport, but it might behoove them to put on a bit of a show. Round 1. Smith strikes first with a low kick, then catches Kruwell in the head with a roundhouse. Another low kick unbalances Steve, who subsequently tries to avoid such strikes altogether. However, he can't evade the one which brings him to the canvas, already in considerable pain. No knockdown is ruled because Smith had struck him in the knee, for which Maurice receives a warning, but Kruwell is nevertheless the worse for wear, with reduced mobility in his left leg, and he immediately slips when throwing a roundhouse kick. He takes an inadvertent kick to the groin and ends the round in the corner, trying desperately to recover. This was a very rough opener for the usually dominant Steve Kruwell. Maurice Smith doesn't have a reputation for fouling opponents, but he's managed to hobble the beast from the east with some unintentional but still illegal strikes. Kruwell will need to find a way to rally effectively, but it looks as though nothing's standing in Smith's way for a quick knockout. Round 2. Kruwell lands his first effective strike with a left hook to the head, but Smith retaliates with another low kick and a painfully blocked roundhouse. Kruwell manages to land some punches on the inside, and it seems as though his strategy all along was to control the bout with boxing. However, Smith shows no patience for this and fells him with a devastating right low kick. Somehow, Kruwell manages to make it back to his feet, but shakes his head as he retreats to his corner, conceding the fight. Maurice Smith wins via technical knockout and becomes the #1 contender for the heavyweight championship. This was an absolute steamroller performance for Smith, who was easily the most dominant fighter of the night and best demonstrated the crushing power of low kicks. He expresses his eagerness to fight Dennis Alexio in the post-match interview, which is also cut short by the fighter's language. As it would turn out, that match never materialized, Alexio choosing to give up below-the-waist fighting after the aforementioned Longinidis bout. Smith was far from done competing, as he'd go on to shortly box in the first K1 Grand Prix before reinventing himself as a mixed martial arts fighter. In one of the sport's major upsets, he became the second UFC heavyweight champion after an unexpected win over Mark Coleman. Smith retired after 2003 as one of the most famous names in martial arts throughout the world. Despite plans to produce more WMAC events, it seems as though no ensuing show was promoted under this banner, and I believe that the promotion's title holders were collectively recognized as ISKA champions. Peter Cunningham was subsequently listed as the ISKA World Light Welterweight Oriental Rules titleist, and he defended this championship at least twice more before retirement. This would mean that Dennis Alexio was the defending ISKA World Heavyweight Oriental Rules titleholder when he fought Stan Longinidis in December. And this would seem to be the legacy of the World Martial Arts Challenge, as little more than a step in the ongoing history of the ISKA. It brought kickboxing to American audiences on a scale hitherto unheard of, but it apparently wasn't successful in either perpetuating the organization or in converting new longtime fans, at least not in a paying capacity. It's easy to see why. With over half of the matches ending in stoppages and the main event failing to unambiguously name a heavyweight champion, this was far from the spectacular that had been promoted. Nevertheless, for fans of classic kickboxing and especially fans of the fighters involved, these matches shouldn't be avoided. If nothing else, it's an opportunity to see some of the best boxers of all time competing at the height of their fame, demonstrating the prowess that made them timeless champions. Whatever criticisms these matches must bear, they're certainly not boring. Additionally, even though the WMAC didn't become a promotional powerhouse, it contributed to the international kickboxing revival that's otherwise attributed to the K1 organization. The show has yet to be released in any complete and collectible form, but again, I encourage viewers to track down the fights and watch all of them in their entirety for a very exciting slice of martial arts history.